this video I'm going to go through content objects, what they are, some examples of how to use them, and then go through an actual demo of creating one. So first off, what they are. It's a feature within Visual Dialogue that is really handy for tailoring communication to different segments of customers. They use dynamic content to do that. So for example, you may have a piece of communication, for example a letter or an email, and you want to use the same piece of communication but just one section of it needs to be different to tailor to different segments. Perhaps the first paragraph you might want to tailor to a particular age segment, or there might be a special offer that you only want a particular segment of customers to see. A content object, or placing a content object within that piece of communication, will enable you to use that same message template across multiple customer segments. So some really common examples might be, or some really simple ones, might be the contact details that you put at the end of a piece of communication. You can tailor it to different branches or different stores. Or you may have multiple brands, so things like logos, headers, footers, contact details, and just the actual brand name within the communication, that can be altered as well. Okay, now let's go through an actual demo of how to set up a content object. Let's close this down. Now for the demo, we're just going to create some content objects for an email and letter. So let's first open an example letter. So here's a letter that you may create, and in this particular example we're going to update the contact details. I have the name of store and phone number and the store manager name. I've got a double up of the name of store here. So we have 3 areas which require some dynamic content. So we'll create 3 content objects. First step, head up to the Create tab and click on Content Object. Give your content object a name, so we'll start with name of store, store name. Click Next. Now for this section we want to select mixed mode. It's the most versatile and easy to use mode, so select mixed mode and finish. Okay, so now we're in the content object creator. Basically what we're doing here is, or what the content object is, it's a set of rules that tells Visual Dialogue which content to use for which particular situation. So we're going to create the content and then create the rules. Let's start with the content items. Head up to the Design tab and click on New Content Item. Okay, this will be the George Street store. Okay, once you've given your content item a name, you'll need to tell what type of content it is. So we've got some options: image, HTML, text, message template, or URL. The most common ones you're going to use are HTML, text, and image. Because this is a content object for a letter, we're going to pick text. So that will mean that wherever this content item is placed is going to pick up the same formatting that is in the letter. And click OK. Okay, now on the right hand side here we've got the design area where you can punch in what you want the text to be, and then you get a little preview of what it'll look like. Okay, so let's punch it in. Click Save, and then you'll get the content preview. Let's create another content item. Up here, Design tab, New Content Item. Okay, we're going to tell it to be a text content type. Click OK. That will do for now. We'll just have the 2 content items to start with, but the same rule will apply whether you have 2 content items up to 50 or 100. You might have many stores or many items to choose from. Now let's create some rules. So head over to Rules, head up to the Design tab, click on New Rule. Now most of the time the rule name will be the same as the content item. It just keeps it nice and consistent. Don't have to do it that way, that's just the way that I create it. You can put a description in there if you like, otherwise just leave it blank, it doesn't make a difference. Now under rule type you can have selection, expression, or script. So this is telling the content object which customers you want to see a particular content item. So the easiest one to pick here is selection. This one you can create yourself in Visual Dialog. You can use an existing selection that you've already created. With Expression or Script, you can also use those, but you may need our help with creating something for that. Let's go with selection for now. Under content item, you'll just need to select which content item you want to fit this rule. So we're going to pick George Street. There is a handy section down the bottom here called specify an active period. Now we're not going to use it for this particular example, but say you have a special offer or a special campaign which has a promotional period and you only want a particular piece of content to be seen or shown during a specific period. So instead of having to remind yourself, this is a handy little tool. You can click on here and then just select the date that it is active and then when it will become inactive. Okay. Now on the right hand side, we need to tell the content object which selection to use for this rule. Now you will need to have already created the selection, which I have done here, and then you need to navigate where that selection is saved. So for this one I have Sydney customers. So what I'm telling the content object is that for any member that is, for any customer that is a Sydney customer, they will be shown the content item that is called George Street. So let's create one more rule for the Flinders Street one. Design tab, new rule. Skip the description if you like, select a selection and select your content item. Okay. And plug in a selection here. So Melbourne customers. Any customer that is a Melbourne customer will see the Flinders Street content item. Okay, so now we have 2 content items and 2 rules. But what happens if there is a customer that doesn't fit either of those rules? So doesn't fit into the Melbourne customer selection or the Sydney customer selection. You need to create an additional rule, which is going to be the default rule. So every content object will have a default rule. Same process, design tab, new rule, and we'll call this one default. Now for a default rule, you don't need to select a selection, expression or script, just keep it on none. And in the content item, you need to tell it which content item to choose from if a customer doesn't fit Melbourne or Sydney customers. So let's just pick George Street. Okay. Now the rules are prioritized. So whichever rule comes first and whichever rule a customer first fits, that's the one it's going to see, or that's the content item they're going to get shown. So here I've got George Street, Flinders Street, default. Default should always be last. The only time I've seen it not be last is if, for example, you have other rules which have to do with special offers. Let's keep it simple for this example. Default is last. But the way that you change it, if you need to, is just up here in the design tab. You've got these arrows that can go down and up. Save. And that's your content object complete. While we're here though, I want to show how quick and easy it is to duplicate a content object now that you've already set it up like this. So we know that in our letter, we also need the store phone number. So let's go back to our content object we created called store name, go up to the Visual Dialog tab, and let's do a save as. We'll call this one store number. Okay. So we've already set up the content items and the rules and the default rule. So now for this, we only need to update the actual item details or the text. So George Street. Not sure if this is a real number. Click save and you'll see the preview down the bottom here. Okay, click save. And that's as easy as that. Now you have two content objects, one that looks at store number and one that looks at store name. Now both of them are following the same rules because you're going to show Sydney customers, Sydney information, Melbourne customers, Melbourne information. Any other customers, and we have set this to be George Street. Okay, so that's two content objects down. Now, what else do we need in our letter? We also need the store manager name. So back to our content object, let's do another save as. Top left tab, visual dialog tab, save as. Super simple. George Street. And there you go. That's 3 really quick content objects that you have now created for your letter. So next step is to actually insert those content objects into your letter. All we need to do here is head down to the first area that we need dynamic content for, put the cursor in the area of text that you would like the formatting to be picked up, click space, head over to the right hand side in the toolbox section. You'll notice there are several menus down here. Just select content objects. Okay, now our one is not there. In order to see it, if you've just created it, head up to the View tab, click Refresh. And there they are. Okay, so what are we wanting to insert here? We want the name of the store, so store name. Okay, now you can see that it has a merge tag here. So when a customer is merged into this letter template, it's going to check content object 5, which is store name, and then insert the relevant content item. Now let's just tidy up this template here. And the next one we need is phone number. Head over to content objects, store number. A little bit of formatting here. Okay, now we need store manager. Store name. Okay, now here is your updated letter template. Head up and click save, and now you can test to see what those content objects will look like. So head to the design tab and click test. Okay, you can see all of those content objects worked as they should. Okay, so that is our letter template completed. Let's close that down. Now we also have the email. So we'll open up our email. So this is a HTML email template, same content as the one what we were seeing in the letter template. You can see down the bottom here the contact details. We need the sections for the dynamic content. Okay. Unfortunately, you won't be able to use the content objects exactly as they were for emails because the text that we selected won't work in a HTML template. So I've still got the content object open for store manager. Now, this is really easy again. Let's save this as, we'll do a save as, store manager email. You can name these however you like. Now, all we have to do here is click on the content item and update the content type from text to HTML and click OK. Do the same thing with the rest of your content items as well. Click save. Now there's no need to update any of your rules. They are absolutely fine as is. And that's your content object for store manager email. I'll do the same for the other 2 content objects that were created. Well, this one, actually, you know what we'll do? We'll close this down. Open up our other content objects, store number. Oops, don't forget to save as. Go back to our email, which I closed down. And now it's the same process as we did for the letter. It's just a little bit fiddly with an email template. So what you do here is you select the email design section and Control F to find the section of text that you want to update. Oopsies. So the reason why I've done that is because the email template formatting can become quite fiddly if you start editing it here. So if you do a Control F to find a word, then that opens this frame and you don't update any formatting that you didn't want there. So now we are here, we need to put in the content objects. Same principle, head over to the toolbox, right hand side, go to content objects. Now we want to put in the name of the store email, store name for email. Okay. And I want the store number, email. Store manager name for email. And name of store for email. Click Save. And then we're going to test the email. Head up to the Design tab and click Test. Okay, let's scroll down and check out our content objects. Here we go. There we go. There's one seamless, personalized piece of communication. Contact the team at George Street on this number for more information. Yours sincerely, Susie Bent, George Street Store Manager. So I can just see here that I need to put in an additional space in between the content object and the other text. So we'll just do that now. Close. Yeah. Space. Save. Done. So once you get a little bit more familiar with using content objects, then you can try out different things. You may have multiple brands. In this example, we have the Spark logo. You might want to update that with one of your different brands. You might want to insert a signature, which will be an image content object as well. You might even like to try and create a content object just as we've done here, but instead of a very short piece of copy, you might want to create a whole paragraph of copy that will be tailored or be a special offer for one segment of customers. Okay, I hope that has helped with creating and using content objects.